30 days ago, I stopped listening to any and all podcasts after years of listening to podcasts for hours and hours every single week. And today, I'm going to tell you what's changed. Like most of us, I've been listening to podcasts for a very long time. Whether I was running, driving to work, cleaning, going on a walk, or at the gym, there was probably some form of self-improvement or health podcast in my ears. And while I wouldn't say I was addicted, I certainly found myself listening to so many things to the point where I was starting to get overwhelmed by how many improvements I had to make in my life and how much needed to change in order for me to be okay and how much it was going to cost and how much energy it was going to take. And that is why I decided to quit podcasts for 30 days. Now, I will say all of the overwhelm from consumption in general definitely didn't just stem from podcasts. Social media, Instagram, TikTok, all of it is to blame as well. But podcasts are just the main way that I always got my information. And for whatever reason, they were the type of social media or consumption that I almost deemed okay for myself.
Because they were the things that successful people were listening to. They were the things that allowed me to multitask and to get other things done as I was going through my day.
So this podcast detox of sorts really started from that feeling of overconsumption and just knowing that something in everything I was listening to was not actually serving me anymore. And if anything, it was actually holding me back. I did end up going on social media a lot less just naturally throughout this time, but intentionally I did decide to not listen to some of the information that I had been listening to and trying to implement in my life. These were things like removing the toxins from all your household products and beauty, what supplements to take or how to mouth tape so you can get the best sleep, how to go through a low cortisol workout and diet plan and make sure that you're eating enough meat and strength training in order to lose the weight. All things that science and statistics and so many pieces of proof show to be the best option for all of us, and things that I had tried to implement to the best of my ability, but something in me wasn't feeling good. And so I just wanted to kind of create this like void or this 30-day space where I was just saying, I don't really care what has been said. I'm going to do some of them if they feel good or some of them if they don't, but I'm going to trust my body and how I feel overall most of all. And as someone who has very much relied on the advice of experts and people outside of her for a very long time, I have to say this was the best thing I ever could have done for myself. I don't think I noticed how much other people's voices and what other people were advising or telling me was actually affecting my own ability to listen to myself. And in doing just 30 days of a kind of like consumption detox from podcasts and also not trying to implement the things I had already learned from podcasts, I saw so many changes that I really wasn't expecting to see in my life. And it was kind of crazy. Now, some of these things, you guys, are absolutely wild, but I'm gonna save the craziest ones for the end. The first thing I noticed was that I listened to way more music. Now, this may sound fairly obvious, but to me, this was something that was relatively surprising. Somewhere between 7 to 10 years ago when podcasts entered the chat, I didn't realize that I started to choose podcasts over music and all the times that I could listen to something. In hindsight, part of me thinks that I did this because it made me feel less alone, or it kind of gave me this false feeling like I was improving myself or growing or moving forward in moments where maybe I just needed to turn off for a bit. But regardless, what I didn't realize was how much music actually improved my mood and allowed me to feel something and connect with myself. And so when I started to choose podcasts over music in times where I was on a road trip or in the car or on a run, and I really could listen to music and that music would really change my experience, the laziness or kind of like attachment to the podcast always came up and I would choose them first. And in turn, that meant that I was kind of always in this like more serious mode, and I always kind of felt like there was something about me that was broken or not working or not right. And so it created this kind of cycle of I always need to fix something, I always need to be better, I always need to change something, rather than creating the cycle where I was kind of connecting to myself and my joy and my excitement for everything going on around me. This kind of feeds into the second thing, which is that when I stopped listening, my mood changed seemingly overnight. I immediately felt way less anxious, way more in touch with myself, and like the world wasn't going to burn down in front of me. I think when we get into these like kind of personal development spells where we always feel like something needs to be better or we need to be improving at every single moment of every single time,
or multitasking or maximizing or optimizing,
we can become a different version of ourselves that is a lot more suppressed and serious, and it makes us feel like everything else around us has to be more serious. And we start to kind of get a little bit like intense and just like cooped up and closed in. And I think that's what was happening to me almost without realizing, is that the more I listened to things and kind of absorbed information and heard what experts were saying and heard what I wasn't doing right and what needed to change, I took them all so seriously and I implemented them all. And then my life became this like living self-improvement regimen where there was no room for fun. Like my morning routines would take so long and it would just really drive me nuts that I had to do all of these things before bed just to get good sleep. And what was hilarious about this, and feeds into a couple of the other things that I'm about to share, is that these things that I was doing to improve my sleep, my health, my weight, my quality of life actually weren't working. But because so many people told me they were supposed to work, I didn't even notice it. Which brings me to the third point, which is that I lost weight and gained energy. Now, this definitely comes back to the fact that most of the podcasts I listened to had something to do with health. And I was very much following the guidance that so many podcasts I listened to were giving about how women should follow a more low cortisol approach and they should eat higher protein and they should do strength training. And so after doing that for a very long time, I didn't really want to stop doing that because I was just kind of waiting for these results that everyone was talking about to come and happen for me. But I almost forgot the fact that I've always liked to run. Running is fun for me. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm that person. I think I kind of created it for myself, but running is something I genuinely enjoy, and I stopped doing it. And so when I stopped listening to as many podcasts, I also stopped feeling as guilty for doing things that were quote unquote wrong, like high cortisol activities like running, or eating things that weren't very high protein, or having caffeine. All things I subconsciously started feeling guilty about the more podcasts and experts told me that I should not be having them. And this leads me to probably the biggest thing for me in this time period, which was that I naturally found so much more clarity in terms of who I was, what I wanted to be focusing my time on, and where I really wanted to go, which were all things that were really hard for me to identify when I was constantly consuming things, hoping they would help me find my direction, find where I wanted to go next. Funny enough, taking all of that out actually gave me the space to listen to myself and kind of feel what just felt good versus felt bad in my body. And the things that I wanted to focus on started to come up naturally. I think sometimes when we're highly motivated people, we seek out information because we want to better ourselves, which is a great quality that we have. But the shadow side of that quality is that we can sometimes listen to those people more than we listen to ourselves. We are like the 5 people we spend the most time around. So there is value in just kind of surrounding ourselves with those experts that have done what maybe we want to do and listening to what they are saying, because we will subconsciously start to take on some of their patterns, their habits, their ways of thinking. But it will also by nature make it harder for us to listen to ourselves and know what really feels good to us. And at the end of the day, the path to success in any area of your life for you is going to be unique. It's not going to look exactly like someone else's. And it's oftentimes going to require you to lean more on your intuition than on your logic. And so when we're only really focusing on what other people are telling us, or we're having so many voices in our head
telling us what's right, what's the best way, how they made it, the only thing,
that can sometimes get very overwhelming and make it very hard for you to listen to your voice, because God forbid your voice maybe is telling you to do something contradictory to what one of these other people you're listening to is telling you. You're going to very quickly not listen to your voice in order to listen to them, because you kind of subconsciously feel like they know more. And that was happening to me with podcasts. I would almost create this room of voices that made me feel guilty if I was ever to do anything that didn't align with what they were advising. And finally, this one's fairly obvious, but I had way more time and felt way more creative and productive. If you're someone who has any sort of creative profession, or you just like being creative as a person, you know how disappointing it can be when you don't feel creatively charged. You don't feel like there's a bunch of energy inside of you to do something or to make something. And I sometimes think that social media and podcasts and listening to things and getting more information from outside of us, it can be very helpful because it can spark ideas. It can create things inside of you and it can kind of light that fire. But if there's too much, I do feel like it almost drowns it out. And for me, the more that I was consuming in all of the platforms, the more I noticed that my creativity was kind of just getting dampened because I was always comparing myself to someone else, and I was always questioning if I could do it more like
that video I saw, or that thing I listened to, or that example someone gave.
And so again, it created this room for comparison, this room for guilt, and this room for subconsciously not making any decisions, never moving forward, never taking action. In addition to this, when you are very attached to listening to content or anything, it eats up time. There were so many days where I would go on a walk and listen to a podcast and then come home after the walk and just sit there and do some kind of meaningless task just in order to finish the episode that I was listening to because it was really good. And it would eat up so much time because I constantly just wanted to consume. It put me in a little bit of a paralysis or a numbness, and I didn't really realize that until I pulled myself out and didn't listen to anything or consume as much, that I now feel so much more alive. And so I think the real crux of this video, and the thing that I hope you take away from it, is that whether you do a 30-day podcast detox or not, or a consumption detox or not, you really need to start to watch how discretionary you are when you are consuming other people's content, even this video. Because at the end of the day, I can give all the guidance of my experience, and experts can say what works for the majority of people in science, but no one knows you better than you know you. And it's very easy for us to fall into these traps where we are falling out of love and out of touch with ourselves, and we think we hear something, we think we understand something, we think we know something because someone else says it, when really what someone else is saying is only taking us further away from what deep inside of us is feeling. That is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you do choose to do a 30-day podcast detox, or you've had some sort of experience with this and maybe even had different results, I would love to hear that in the comments. So please share it below, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.